to order. It is now 7 o'clock, so we will call this meeting to order. Are there any public comments?
Ma'am.
None? All right, then we will go ahead. Our November building and finance minutes were included in our packet, just as a refresher. And we'll move on to the building, major projects and equipment plan with Mr. Keating.
Good evening, everybody. Currently, the varsity baseball field at Sandburg is under construction. Finally, so we're off and moving. They are putting in the sewers as we speak. Well, not right now, but this morning they were doing it, so I was out there today. Let's see, the renovations for the roof. They'll hopefully start when school's out. Phase 1 solar, that's hoping to begin soon enough. They're working on their drawings and they're finalizing. We're having a construction meeting to start to kick off, see when they're going to start and what their plans are for finishing and on-site. Pool renovations are, the drawings are still being worked on. The concrete walls are failing in Sandburg. The elevator renovations, they currently are purchasing the equipment, and when they get all their parts and pieces together, they will start that as soon as the kids are out of school. The work around Andrew baseball field, the asphalt's been poured and the concrete pad has been poured for the shed, so that is complete. Phase 1 HVAC upgrades, that is currently still on hold, possibly following summer, there's nothing going on this summer with that. And we are currently reviewing all 3 schools' capital projects requests, reviewing what other possible projects we'll be doing this summer. Does anybody have any questions on the major capital project?
Hey, just real quick, so the baseball field will be done?
We're hoping, as long as right now the weather's holding off, if we can get all of the underground finished and ready to go, when the weather breaks, they can get the turf installed. So weather pending right now, it looks good so far, they're moving along, so we're hoping to get all of the grading done before, and then when the weather breaks, the turf. They needed 40 degrees solid to start installing turf. We have problems with the stitching and so if the weather dips too low, we will have to wait until it breaks again. Well, hopefully before baseball starts, yes, that's the plan.
Everything's been pushed back anyway.
Yeah. Right. Because the season's not going to start.
It won't be the typical, what's it, March probably they would probably start?
March, yeah, baseball starts.
Yeah, it's not going to be March. And
We're sure they're happy about it.
yeah, it's probably April to May, it's being pushed back.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything to share with us on maintenance and cleaning?
No, currently ongoing cleaning daily. More wipes, more hand sanitizer than I know what to do with right now.
We're good on supplies. Just on a side note, I don't want to take time here, but every Thursday, John, Dave, myself, and Bob meet. We review a lot, and we go over all the PPE, you know, the hand sanitizers, wipes, thermometers, plexiglass, masks, gloves, gowns, requests from teachers or staff. Yeah, I mean, everything. We're really in good shape. I mean, a couple months ago it was scarier, you know, because things were on back order, and now things are coming in like, and they're actually cheaper.
Yeah, things are definitely cheaper.
Going down in prices big time.
Fine, yeah. There are also that's what's nice that we're projecting out farther, so just make sure we're not caught without anything.
We have a good tally on what, you know, how many wipes are being used in a given day in a given classroom, and blah, 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 and we have the supply. So we're really, I mean, I think the weekly meetings we started a long time ago, probably March or April, has been helpful to get us through. And we also talk about the projects and even like the CARES grants and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's good to know that Bob and Dave are really on top of all that ordering of stuff. And I think right now we're 100% all requests are done.
Yes.
I love the effort that I'm saying currently. So I just wanted to share that it is an ongoing conversation.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that. Then we'll go ahead and move on to our finance portion of the meeting, and talk about our financial projections.
Yeah, this month, our financials, we're not ready for this meeting. It was, we were still receiving information, I think, earlier this week and getting everything balanced and figured out. We'd rather have the final numbers ready for the board meeting and have them be accurate than to present something that's, you know, not exactly where we want it to be. So we'll be bringing that to the board. But in place of that, we thought we'd take a minute and go over something we try to do once a year. I know a couple of years ago, Kevin Peranto did a presentation and shared our financial projection, and I thought I'd go ahead and do that this year. A lot of times we have our, you know, our, it's a December, like, joint
meeting in December.
Yeah, and so we were not doing this, but now we'd like to get back to that if at all possible. So this is a good time of year to be talking about this. We have our, you know, our budget done, our audit done, so there's a lot of final numbers that can be incorporated into the model. This model looks at a 5-year history, it looks at the current budget, and a 5-year projection. So it's 11 years in all, you know, that we're displaying in some of these graphs. So let's go ahead and go to the first slide there. We're looking at some revenues, revenue assumptions.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Sure.
I got a text from somebody saying it's hard to hear. Could you guys, those online, can you hear us? Or John's gonna.
Water, I don't know if this.
I can hear just fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, well, let's make sure we project loud from this room. Thank you.
Yeah, so the model assumes flat state funding, so that hopefully is what the worst case scenario, but we're hearing things now, even as late as today, when we, you know, Dr. Gay and I were at the scope, you know, attending the scope meeting, and I think Melissa might have been in on that too. You know, at the very end, we got a little report that there's a lot of things going on behind closed doors, and we'll be hearing very soon what may be affected. And the beauty of this model is everything is, you know, electronic. We can go ahead and put in a different scenario based on what kinds of information we get back from, you know, get from out of Springfield and stuff. So right now it shows flat state funding, no pension shift or property tax freeze, which are a couple of the topics that have been talked about in the past. It incorporates all of our known retirements right now, everybody that's in the pipeline or who has submitted recently. We do have more of those trickling in, so there'd be additional savings associated with those, but we're not, in this model at least, attempting to predict those additional retirements. 1.8% is the CPI that's being used in the model in 2021, and I'll get a little bit more into some of the importance and significance of CPI to our revenues in a minute here, and 2% going forward after that. Also, new property is very important to us and contributes to new revenues, you know, revenue growth from local property tax sources. So we're predicting about $10 million annually in new property. EAV is expected to grow slightly, the existing EAV. So in looking at the couple of the graphs that come out of the model, you can see our EAV change, which I just mentioned. It's a combination of that new property and it's a combination of the new property and change in existing EAV. So the numbers don't exactly tie out because it's a blend of the effect of those on the change in EAV. And then the total EAV analysis, so this is in billions of dollars, 5,090 million, going all the way up in 2025 to 5,006,72. So, you know, we've been seeing some fluctuation in EAV. This was our triennial reassessment this year. They look at properties in Cook County in 3 phases, and every 3 years, each section gets reassessed. So this was our year to get reassessed. And the new assessor actually also this year attempted to update, because of COVID, the other 2 sections of Cook County and bring them all into alignment. So we haven't learned yet what the full effect of that might be on our levy, but we will. That won't necessarily affect how much money we get, but it may affect property tax bills for either businesses or residents, depending upon, you know, what was done with those numbers. So we will see very soon. On the expenditure side, 3.5% increase in health insurance costs. This year was 0. So we had a very good year, and we've been having, you know, some positive results, and I think part of that is due to the fact that in some of our collective bargaining recently, we were able to achieve where new staff can only take our lower cost plans, the HMO or HSA, for their first 5 years of employment. So by them not taking our traditional PPO, I think it's saving us some money. In addition, we're experiencing nearly 100% participation in a biometric screening that allows us to catch serious conditions early and avoid some of the higher costs of illness. Our full-time equivalents, you know, our FTE, our full-time equivalents of staff, we've kept flat. You know, depending on enrollment, and we'll be looking at that in a minute. You know, there could be years where we see it go down a little bit, see it go up a little bit. Just depends on you know, enrollment and our needs and sectioning, which is a whole other discussion. And then no reduction. So no reduction is modeled, and no increase at this time. Estimated savings on retirees, again, has been calculated all the way out to 2026. Increased salaries are based on our CBAs and take us out to 2025 for teachers. So, you know, those are pretty good numbers. And then we assume an amount for lane changes, approximately $120,000. For teachers that are getting additional education and move horizontally on the salary schedule. So we've got that factored in there as well. Next slide is our aggregate revenue analysis. And on the revenue side, you can see the breakout. We're about 87% local between the property taxes and other local. 11% in state, and about 3% federal. The model anticipates modest growth in revenues going forward around 2%. And you can see in our historical data that anomaly that occurred back in 2018, where we had kind of a surge there because of some estimated taxes being done. You know, we had some retiring debt, and they estimated our taxes, and we ended up getting more than we were entitled to. So then in 19, you see they made up for that and took that money back. So that's where, you know, you see kind of it go up and down. We don't typically see a little roller coaster thing like that going on, but it's typically very smooth increases, such as depicted in the projected years, as you'll see. Let's see, on the next slide, expenditures by fund and object. Again, our accounting is broken out by fund, and, you know, funds are things like education fund, operations and maintenance fund, transportation fund, so it's a real, big blocks, bright colors kind of a thing. And then we get into a little bit more detail with the object code, which is the next pie. And you can see there where salaries and benefits make up 62% of our expenditures, purchase services another 15%. So, you know, you can see the breakdown there, kind of how that comes out. And again, you know, I think I've said this before, we're a service industry, so it's very common to see in school districts, 80% of costs being for labor or for people, because that's pretty much what we're doing is providing a service. I think that's it for that slide. The expenditure analysis. Again, here you can see kind of proportionately which funds make up most of our spending. And again, as you'd predict, the education fund, is going to be the highest. And as we look across here at some of the past years and some of the future years, you can see little fluctuations in spending. Transportation in 20 was down due to COVID. 21, it's a little bit wider there, but again, that's a budgeted year, so that's not actual figures. And then we kind of normalize, I think, going forward in 22. IMRF is pretty stable. So O&M, again, we conservatively budget. So again, I think you can see that's a little bit, maybe a little bit wider than it was in 20. Overall, though, the model reflects about a 2 to 2.3% increase in expenditures on average going forward. So, and I know you heard me say 2% growth in revenues and 2 to 2.3% in expenditures. So, as we get to our last slide, you'll see where Tara and I have, and the entire district has a little bit of work to do, but I think it's manageable. You can see this is our just some aggregate historical information related to surpluses and deficits. In 22, we're predicting some additional funds there, but then in 23, a small deficit. And again, putting those numbers, that sometimes a graph makes things look bigger than they are, but with 80 million or 140 million overall, in our spending, $2 million or $300,000 is a small number. Okay, yeah, this is chart 11, they call it, in the model, and it's showing the 5 years of history, the current year, and 5 years projected. The red line is our fund balance. And again, as we mentioned, there was that anomaly in 18 and 19. If you kind of picture a smoother line that averages those two dots, that's more in line with where we would be if revenues had been received the way they normally are. And then you'll see the title, AFR Balanced GL Revenue and Expenditure. Actually, this week, Tuesday, tomorrow, they'll actually be putting our AFR into the model, but I did go in and override the figure. It was not off by much, but that is not, that 2020 is not an audited figure. The figure is correct. The dot is probably off by $100,000 or so. And then our budget, for 21, again, keeping in mind, budgets are, often conservatively low with revenues and conservatively high with expenditures to some degree, so, we would hope that we would be a little bit better than, is shown there. And then going forward, you can see, it's pretty flat. There's a little bit of a decline, in fund balance. And the blue line depicts 50% of our expenditures. So 50% of our expenditures is a growing number, and we've got flat, fund balance. And the reason that 50% is depicted is that's kind of our goal, is to stay around 50%. And so you see them cross there in 2025. We're going to do whatever we can to, to try to maintain the 50% fund balance, which is 50% of our expenditures, in our balance, in our fund balance, on average. So the colorful bars at the bottom are just by fund. And again, this graph is only depicting the ed fund, O&M, transportation, IMRF, and working cash. It doesn't depict capital projects or bond and interest, things that are kind of, set in motion, and things that we spend down and pay off. So these are our operating dollars, is what you typically hear these referred to.
I'm a little confused on the blue line.
Sure.
I'm not really following or understanding.
Yeah, so it's 50% of expenditures in any given year. So if I budgeted $100 million, then $50 million would be the point on that blue line. If the next year I did $110 million, it'd be $55 million. So it's just 50% of whatever is expected to be spent in any given year.
And why do we use 50%?
That's kind of a goal that was set before my time, to maintain at least a 50% fund balance.
It was a goal of the board a while ago, that was,
Okay?
no, I hate to keep saying that. She's a historian in the room. And Tony, probably in building finance. We wanted to have 50% of the fund balance, and that would keep us in line with what the state is expecting us to have. So in case there was ever a dip, you can live on so many months without having to be deficit spending.
Oh, okay.
And the state wanted to have 6 months of fund balance in the event that the state would pay in reserve.
Okay, now I
That
understand.
the state wouldn't pay or whatever.
So the blue line is expenses, and the red line is blue line.
Well, the blue line is 50% of
Okay,
expenses.
and then the red line is up.
The red line is fund balance, the actual fund balance.
Okay.
So ideally, the two lines would be together. If if we could make that happen perfectly, then we'd be at 50% fund balance. 50% of what we have on balance is what we anticipate spending.
A little higher in fund balance than we are.
Yeah, 50% of what we anticipate spending.
You don't want too much.
No, that's why,
Okay,
with some,
clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no
No,
problem.
that's what it is, it's a 6 months.
yeah, reserve that we agreed on years ago, but that could change.
So, yeah, I had just a few concluding statements, just that the projection was based on conservative estimates. The state funding is modeled to be flat, and we talked about that a little bit in the beginning. The margin for absorbing a significant change in state funding is very narrow, if we want to maintain our fund balances. So, in other words, if they imposed something that required us to pay, for instance, the state's share of TRS, shifting the pension burden onto the school district without funding that's going to chip away at that. But again, we can model any of these things in this very quickly and easily. So if anybody has questions like that, they want to see what something would look like, if you hear something in the news, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll see what I can put together. And then, again, that colorful graph is the one that, you know, where you can best see. And you can actually, in the software, compare our base model to, you know, a pension shift or property tax freeze or, you know, whatever you want to look at, and it'll show, you know, the difference in what's happening to you, you know, graphically to your fund balances. And again, there's charts of, or, you know, tables of numbers that go behind all of this stuff, but it's much easier a lot of times to look at these pictures than it is a bunch of numbers and try to do, you know, the math in your head and see, well, that's 100,000, or, you know, this way you can just see it graphically, so.
Is there a concern about commercial properties?
Is there what?
Is there a concern that commercial properties will lose some value than where they're at right now? As more closures,
Well,
as there's more availability of
yeah.
open rental spaces and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, the concern wouldn't be so much for the stability of our revenues as it would be for the shift of that burden onto the residential property. So I would think if they allowed that to happen to too much of an extent, then you're gonna have a lot of people saying, I'm out of here, you know, sell their house, get out of town, because, you know, they would be shifting, you know, a significant amount of burden onto and that's what I think they take care of, like, properties, in Cook County, I believe, is it residential 10% and businesses are 25%, you know, the Equalized assessed value. In most other counties, it's 33 1/3%, you know, for everything. So it's already being compensated for to take some of the burden off of the, you know, the homeowner. So I would imagine, you know, they do something with that equalization to try to prevent any severe shift or change in that. So
That's why I promote to shop local.
yes.
Keep your dollars in your own community, because when you go outside of that community, it can affect property taxes.
Yep.
You may save a little on Amazon, but when it comes back to your property bill, it's not gonna be worth it.
Yeah.
John, I think I really like this a lot. And I think we just I think it's very, very good to see the 50% savings for the future expenses, at least for the first 6 months. We're going into a very unusual economic environment next year. Who knows what's going to happen with the pandemic? So as the conservative, I'm very glad we have the cash, because we don't know. There's a lot of the state funding is in question. I think the real estate taxes, who the heck knows what's going to happen with commercial properties. So there's a lot of things, and nobody could guess.
Yep. No, it's tough to model some of this stuff in this day and age, but we do the best we can.
I think you did a great job, but we have the financial wherewithal to withstand some negative things that I think might be coming.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good job.
Any other questions? Then we can move on to the enrollment projections.
Yeah, the enrollment projections are in your packet. Tony was good enough to point out that I was looking at the numbers and the graphs weren't reflecting the numbers in my model. So he pointed out that there was something wrong there, and so I got those graphs corrected. They're on the screen. I don't think the ones in your packet are accurate, right? The
Well,
ones.
I send a revised.
Oh, we did send a revised packet with the correct numbers. Okay, so just in a nutshell, I'll just, you know, point out a couple things, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. But all of the information in here is based on a cohort survival. It's basically where you're looking at, you know, how many kindergartners became first graders, how many first graders became second graders over time, you know, and we look at that information, we solicit information from our feeder districts. They give us numbers as to what their enrollment is in various grade levels, and it all feeds into this model. And that's how we do this. It's not always perfect, and, I mean, it's pretty close, especially in the very near years. Sometimes some weird things are happening with private schools or different things like that, neighborhoods aging or new neighborhoods coming online, but it's usually worth looking at anyway. And we do use these numbers. They're used in the financial projection model, and if they would have signaled an increased need for staff, the model would have told me that, and we would have modeled that. But if you look at the first graph is Amos Lonzo Stagg, and it looks pretty flat. They do have a high point of 2,628 kids in '24, so there is a little bubble moving through. And then Sandberg is maybe down a couple hundred kids going out to 2026. And VJA is down about, what is that, or is actually up 119 kids or so. That's kind of what, again, I think in looking at the, 22, 23, 24, those are probably the more predictable years. The further out you get, the more error there can be in trying to project those numbers, but that's...
You look at, from 77 to 7,600, that's not, it's not gonna change when you talk about the amount of sections, the amount of, it's really...
Yeah, 100 less kids, so...
Yeah,
The one thing that is happening, which is, and I've really noticed it in the last year, my neighborhood has become very old, and that there's a lot of us that have been around a long time, the kids are gone. All of a sudden, a lot of people are starting to sell, and there's young families coming in with kids again, grammar school age kids. So I don't think we'll see an impact on our numbers for 5 or 6 years, but I think that those projections are probably going to turn out to be low, because I think the changeover is starting to happen, and I think you're going to start seeing more of an increase in the number of students we're going to have coming here.
Well, there is still space for new growth, and this latest development that we were just talking about is age restricted and multi-family or multi-units. The next one might not be, so.
That's what I need age restricted.
Anyone else have any questions on the enrollment projections? All right, then we'll go ahead and we will move on to the next item on the agenda as I keep scrolling back.
The levy?
And back to the levy.
Yeah, so we revisit the levy. We had our tentative levy last month. Nothing has changed, so there's not a lot to talk about new here. So I guess unless there's any questions, what's going to happen next is this will go to the board. There's some papers behind the memo that you can see where we'll need some signatures of some of the board officers on there, Tony and Susan, and a secretary certificate. And these things will be filed by December 29th with Cook County. So any questions on the levy?
All right, then I guess we'll move on to the workers' compensation renewal.
Yep, the work comp renewal, every year we go through a renewal. It's not a multi-year thing. So it's on the calendar year. So this is beginning in January. These are the rates that would apply. So that's why we're getting this done this month so that we can go ahead and accept the proposals that have been marketed and carefully chosen here by our broker, Alliant. They did go out to market with our work comp. Not too many could touch the rates that we currently have, and as you can see in my memo, the rates we're going to be paying here, even though they represent a 13.6% increase over expiring, are still $11,000 less than they were in 2013. So we haven't seen a lot of growth in our work comp insurance, and I think that's a reflection of all of our staff's efforts in trying to stay safe and take care of dangerous situations, you know, pointing out when there's spilled water and different hazards, and we send out a lot of reminders. We work with this carrier. They actually give us, our current carrier gives us a safety grant, and we try to spend those dollars on things that are going to make our schools safer places to work. So with that said, I think it's unfortunately that it's an increase, but the industry is somewhat hardening, especially as they start considering the effects of COVID-19 and other problems that could arise.
Yeah, I had a quick question about that. It seems like Alliant in their presentation, it seems like they're saying that the multiple lines of insurance has hardened over the course of the last couple of years for a variety of different reasons. But they said the one line that didn't harden was workers' comp.
Yeah, they did say that in the under the property casualty executive summary. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the one line that didn't harden.
Yeah.
And then we still got hit with a 13%.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. Why they say that in there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, whether or not work comp applies to somebody that that's off due to illness or inability to work. I don't think we have any of those yet. So. But.
Yeah, I would hazard a guess that our number of claims would have to have gone down based upon the pandemic.
Well,
Yeah.
we've seen that in our reporting, that we're not getting the same,
And yet we don't seem to be getting the benefit of that,
Well, I mean, we've had more than 100%, more than 100% of premium experienced in several of the last, 4 years, which is what they're looking at. And so, I mean, if you look at the very last page of the property and casualty, it does list under work comp. While some people are enjoying a decrease, it looks like 23% saw a decrease, and 39% had no change. There were 28% that had a 1 to 9% increase, and it's all relative. I mean, if you're already paying a very low rate that's clearly not sufficient to cover your claims, then you're going to see increases, And when we were enjoying no increases or cuts, others were seeing double-digit increases. So it's kind of a cyclical thing, but I mean, the fact that we're we're lower than we were in 2013, or let's see, less than what yeah. I mean, we were paying less than we were paying, what is that, 15 years ago, or?
well, 13, I mean, that's when we came on the board in those first 2 years, we've had quite a few claims.
Yeah, and it's an
Kind
average.
of max,
Exactly.
that's it, yeah. point.
Exactly.
Hey, John, this is Brian. A quick question. And I guess I too am surprised that the rates aren't flat, if not down a little bit, just due to what I would have guessed to be extremely good claim experience from 2020. But that being said, I don't know how long we've had Alliant as a broker, but I can tell you from firsthand, I work for Aon, it's not unusual for a client to ask for some sort of brokerage rebate. And I'm not sure if we've tested that water from time to time over the years, but that is something that, you know, we shouldn't be ashamed of even asking for or broaching with the broker, because I'm sure they're used to it all the time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, we have not gone down that avenue, but that's something I can certainly bring up. We've been with Mesero since I've been here, and before that, and Mesero became Alliant, so, or Alliant, however you pronounce that. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something worth talking about. Look into that.
Yeah, and you know, all of our bigger, I call it more sophisticated clients have been intelligent enough or savvy enough to ask for a rebate. And of course, the broker doesn't operate from any sort of position of strength. So usually the customer will win out. So again, might be something worth considering.
I have one other question about that. They seem to be recommending that we take a look at, due to increases in sexual misconduct and cyber-related issues for school districts, they suggest that we go ahead and get an additional rider to cover those types of claims. Is that the direction that we're going on that?
Yeah, I mean, we are following their recommendation on the level of coverage, and we have excess. We have two different excess coverages, and that excess coverage is very hard to find someone to write for these days. So we're lucky that we're kind of grandfathered into having that, and that we're.
It sounds like a lot of them are getting out of that coverage, the excess coverage.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you know what the cyber insurance is actually covering? Do you have any idea?
You know, John Connolly actually did it, I think he did like a workshop for his association on that, and he worked closely with the broker and with an attorney in gathering information for that. So John asked that I consider doubling cyber, and as you can see, I guess we kind of moved on to property and casualty, but you know, in that recommendation, we are doubling from $1 million to $2 million on cyber. And I think it's primarily, when you think of cyber, it's identity theft, it's employees' information getting hacked from your system, it's ransomware. You know, they're holding your information, won't release it because you had some vulnerability. But I'll tell you, I mean, a lot of districts have been hit with everything from very small to very large things lately, and we have been very fortunate to have John Connolly and his team looking after us, because I mean, he started way early with sending out, you know, stuff to get people to realize how easy it is to open up a email, click on something, and then, you know, you're either loading something onto your computer.
They did that phishing thing to us, we just found out our numbers are going way down, remember? And they're a little annoyed right now because we just did a phishing exercise. And it's a tough time because there was some of the things were like, superintendent would like to see you in your office right away due to regarding your employment, and with all the things going on, pandemic, people were getting nervous, but we're doing, and some of it was like, one of the local districts has got hit again, and with ransomware, they're down, and, I was online today with, HSDO, and there were some districts that were, they sent us an email out to staff to raise some money and send it to this thing, and people were doing it because they thought it was the right thing to do. And it was nothing to do with the school district and the street, you know, so there's a lot out there, and, I think the coverage is worth it.
Maybe we can have John come in and just give us a
Sure.
little synopsis
Yeah.
of, what we look at for that.
We're just good to have John come into this group, do a tech update, when we're ready in January, February.
John.
Yeah, you like John, so maybe do a tech update, which is the financial part of that too, and
That would be great.
in January, February, whatever you guys,
Whatever works, whatever makes the most sense.
that kind of covered the two,
Insurance.
yes, renewals.
Any other questions in regards to insurance? Okay, then we will move on to see if there's any, state financing issues, any
Yeah.
updates.
If you don't mind, I just want to talk a little bit, John alluded to it earlier today, and, we had a meeting with Representative Robin Burke, that's not true, Robin Kelly, U.S. Representative Robin Kelly. And she was actually, right, Jen, she was on the floor, and she came in to speak with us at Scope. So she said that they are in negotiations for another COVID stimulus package coming soon. They're supposed to vote soon on this. It will not be as robust as they wanted, but it will hold us over until the President-elect Biden takes office. It's about $82 billion for schools and education, and billions more for PP. Remember, this is federal, it's not state. And billions more for PP, but nothing for individuals at this time. She said right now it's getting stalled in the Senate, but they'll see. They talked about mandatory waivers, but not what you care about. They about the FERCA that ends in December. It probably will end in December, but there are some extensions that the President-elect is looking at with his cabinet, because we talked also about backtrack a little bit on waivers. I know it's not a financial issue, but waivers, Secretary of State, that's your Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, is on her way out. They have no idea who the next Secretary of Education is going to be yet. President-elect's working on health and safety in those areas, not in education yet, but should have hopefully someone in the next couple of weeks, which will also tie into FERCA. They're going to extend FERCA, which is that, John, help me out, the FERCA is the leave.
Family, yeah,
Family leave due to COVID issues.
right.
Yeah,
Expensive leave.
yes.
The extension of the FMLA.
And then John alluded to that the governor has been having some closed doors meetings with some of the top leadership in Springfield. And he's been very vocal on how bad the state finances are that he inherited. He stated he inherited. He said something will happen. He's been meeting, as I said, it'll depend on the federal money. Moody's said that they need to raise the taxes to meet the state needs, probably pension freeze. 52% of people support a pension reform via a constitutional amendment, along with a fair tax bill, according to a latest poll, and a possible reduction in EVM dollars. So, as I said earlier, I think it's good that we have a conservative, and it's good to have the reserve. It's good to have the reserve, because next year, no one's 100% sure we'll have it next year with the new government in DC, and how that will work with the government in Springfield. And it looks like there might be leadership change in Springfield too, and the House side. So that could be,
A lot of changes can be.
that could change a lot of things, and maybe move things quicker or slower, who knows? You know, so.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Day? Then we'll move on to the transportation report, which is pretty fantastic.
Yep, going well. Yeah, Nikisha Williams, our new transportation coordinator, is working out really good, and she's been keeping track of things and checking billings carefully with the credits we're receiving for, Wednesdays off and so on and so forth, and she's caught a couple little glitches, and I appreciate her attention to detail, and we
Good.
We need to.
Yeah.
Very good, very, very good.
Very smart.
Hey, John, could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It seemed like a couple of months ago, it may have been actually 4 or 5 months ago, you talked about the lower utilization of the busing services and possibly, and I'll probably butcher this, advancing some of the funds to the busing companies or keeping, I guess, the revenues or the expenses that we would have been paying flat, even though we were getting less service. I mean, did that come about, or is that kind of a moot issue at this point?
Yeah, our agreement, like what we're seeing is about, it's actually 35% is being billed on Wednesdays when they're not transporting students. And that's to help them, carry them with their hard, costs associated with having mechanics and rent for their building and the administration they have to maintain, at their offices. So that's the credit we've been receiving. That portion of the bill is actually segmented off and charged at a lower rate.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, we are seeing a significant reduction in our costs for transportation.
Well, that's good to hear it. What made me think of it is I saw what the Metra prices were going to be for 2021 for monthly transportation, and that was down significantly. And that's something I've never seen in, 30 years of commuting to downtown. Of course, I haven't commuted in 9 months now, so I'm sure Metra has had to take corrective actions, just like the busing companies, to drive their costs down.
Yes, I think they have made some adjustments.
Anyone else? Then we'll go ahead and discuss our bid results for the spring sports.
Yep. Speaking of numbers being down, the total bid award, $12,643, which is actually less than requires us to bid. So,
That's true.
not knowing that when we went out, we bid, but that's fine, and we've got some really good competitive pricing here for our spring sports.
It may help though, get a competitive price even though we don't have to. You never know. It's more transparent.
We don't know what's gonna happen with
No.
sports anyway, so.
Yep. And Chris does all the work on that. Chris can't.
Thank you, Chris. You're welcome. Appreciate that.
Extra bonus money for you.
We can go ahead and discuss the substitute pay increase.
Yeah, this is just a discussion item, and it's been talked about that this year's been rough. I don't know, Dr. Kay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so with the substitutes right now, it's been difficult to get certain subs, and as you may or may not know, I know the board's aware of this, that external subs right now is $110 a day, and for T230 retirees, $125 a day. But John, correct me if I'm wrong, for internal subs, it's
$43 and, 43 and some change, $43.75 per period.
Period.
So
it's a 6-period day. It's 8-period day. We don't cover prep or lunch. We cover the 5 periods and advisory. So 6 times 42 is more than $110.
Almost $263 a day for internal.
So there's been Julia has been tracking, the principal's now tracking our attendance, and for COVID-related reasons perhaps. And so then I asked ISC, which is our South Cook region, Dr. Vanessa Kinder, to do one of our meetings, I think it was last week, to do a survey. What are people paying? I just wanted to know, because people are asking me to increase it. Subs are calling saying, well, I can get blank over here, blank over here. I don't know what's true or not true, So I said, could you do a quick survey of the 66 school districts? And the average is probably around, 90% have gone up a little bit to like 140, 145. Then at the high school organization, which is from, like I said, all the high school superintendents, I asked the same kind of survey. High schools, right or wrong, are more, typically a little more per day than elementary. You can argue one way or the other, maybe harder to do a kindergarten class than it is a senior math class, but it's just the way it is. Lake County, for some reason, they chose to go to 175, for a lot of them in Lake County. Some of our partner schools already gone to 150. And however, it's not going to boast my case in any shape or form. They still said it's difficult to get subs. You know, it's still not the easiest thing getting some subs. And all of us want to get away from internal subs for multiple reasons, because we like to keep the teacher in their own space. We want them walking around the hallways. We want them in a familiar space for close contact, you know that, and financially. So the average out there, I think, John, that we saw was between like 140, 150.
Yeah.
And like Bradley, Bourbonnais, some districts have increased it, but they're giving a time frame. Like, in other words, they're increasing it to May 1st, 2021, or for second semester only. And it's going back to the blah, 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 and the FY21. I would like, for discussion purposes, and then if we were going to do this, to bring it to the board next week, is that we look at maybe going to, I may not be the popular one in the group of the cabinet and all that. I don't think we should go over 140, my own thought, but pleasure of the board. And we do have a time frame, like April 30th, because once we get into May, or May 30th, or the last day of school. But I think two things, that if we're going to increase it, we have an ending date. We put on the website, because there's a website that goes on, the word temporary over and over and over again, the temporary change. Some school districts made this change and didn't put the word temporary, they're not petrified. They're nervous what to do next year if they all of a sudden go back to the regular rate. They're going to say, why did you go back to the rate? If we go up, I would suggest we were transparent and say, we're going up for this reason only, for this month only, in June, that's not me, but that's not my license, but July 1, 2021, we're back to our 110, 125. That's my suggestion, just for conversation piece. John, did I miss anything on, I know you were looking at.
No, I mean, I think the two big points are that if we don't cover absence with external subs, we're going to pay for it with internal subs, and it costs more money.
It's double, I know.
So double, yeah, for that versus, you know, a little bit more for the external. The other point is that obviously if we don't have coverage, that's the one thing that could shut us down completely. We can't operate without labor, you know, without.
Schools that are, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I've been on so many Zooms since 8:30 this morning. And schools that are not closing, going fully remote, 99% are going because of staffing. Not because of close contact or transmission in the buildings or in the district. It's staffing issues. Not being able to, you know, staff the buildings and the classrooms. So we're asking to just give us a little bit of an edge, because people do, because now, you know, we go on, what's it called, ASAP?
Right.
So so they can see everyone at one time. Remember before, you used to call the school, that was the old days, you know, right, and they could see blank school is this, blank school is this, you know, and then John and I were talking about, I think that if you have one school is 150, and elementary is 150 or 140, I think for $10 a day, they probably still go with the 140, you know, go with the high school. If they're typically a high school sub, that's what typically people are. They don't usually go all over the board. But I would suggest that it's 140 flat, not different for 230 employees, just 140 flat for the next, starting January something.
For the remainder of this school year.
100%, yeah. But I even say we start in January, and I even try to start, if the board approves it next Thursday, we don't do it Friday, Monday, Tuesday. The 3 days of school, it's just paperwork. I think we start the second semester. That's my suggestion, because it'll be a business nightmare trying to figure who subbed on Thursday, we got one price, Friday got never price. That's me, I don't know.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you. No, thank you for clarifying, that's perfect.
What has been our, response for getting subs at this point?
75% coverage, 80% coverage, we've been out, 75% coverage of outside subs. And we're trying to increase that, 75. Now, over the last 2 weeks, it's been 100%. Imagine that. Sorry. We haven't had that, but, right, is that what we got from Julia? It was 100%? but we were down to 75%, right?
Yeah.
On external. But that's not just a 230 issue.
No, I understand, I'm just curious where we fall
Yeah.
with what's going on out there.
Yeah. I mean, there are, I mean, all our partner schools are on site, are hybrid model. So, I mean, depending on percentages, you know. And some schools are more lenient with allowing remote at home, teachers at home and all that. And we like to have, we have kids necessarily like to have a body in the building, in the classroom. You know, so we had some in the classroom, teachers at home. So, I mean, that's our thought, that's our reasoning, that's the time frame I'm looking for. I don't know anyone in the room here or on Zoom, online, if any principals, am I missing anything you'd like to add? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I do that well.
As we bring up substitutes, I just want to inform everyone, when we had our last negotiations, this was one of the points that we discussed because we did a lot of training during the day, which required subs, which caused that training, those professional developments to be more expensive because we were covering not only the professional development, but then the staff we were bringing in to cover their classrooms. So this was one of the things that we scaled back, and we moved where training times were, so we didn't have to have that expense in substitute, whether it was internal or external. So it's one of the things I think we did really well in that last negotiation. So
The principals would agree with you, that helped tremendously, especially not even knowing this was gonna happen.
right.
Principals, did I miss anything, or just thumbs up? I don't see anybody, but.
No, I think you got it, Dr. Gay, and I really do think that a little bit of an increase could go a long way and save us from having to use internal subs. So I think that it could be more desired. These jobs could be more desired, but by some of our external subs that certainly sub in other districts as well. So, and I like the addition of the end date. And, you know, we're always reviewing things. I mean, we've reviewed sub pay on a regular basis. And so that doesn't mean that we couldn't review and keep the door open in the future to talking about how much they're compensated.
Agreed.
One of the things you mentioned was that these other districts that have increased the fee are still having trouble getting subs. So I guess my question would be, how much of an increase in the number of outside subs do you think we'd be able to get by increasing the pay?
I think it's more a question of how many can we maintain, how many can we retain. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of new subs.
Okay.
We're just trying to.
Not lose subs in the neighborhood.
Are we losing subs now?
Yeah.
We are.
We are, because of this reason.
Yeah.
They can go a block away and get $30, $40 more a day. And, you know, if they're retired, it's, I mean, money per day. I mean, it sounds cold, but.
A lot of the subs, and correct me if I'm wrong, are because of the number of teachers that are on the COVID leave, which a lot are due to expire at the end of this semester.
Yeah.
So do we have, no?
We don't have that many on FERCA. This is typically for, and Jen or Bob or Eric, they're much better off in this than I am, but this is typically for those staff members that have to be home due to exposure or close contact or probable, correct? Anybody?
Yes. And in addition, in addition to, you know, being on a formal COVID protocol, if they have somebody in their household that's experiencing symptoms or they themselves are experiencing symptoms, we're just much more aware of, you know, there's an increase in the number of people are out because, you know, we're being aware and having people are being tested or seeking a differential diagnosis when they do have those symptoms. So yeah, Dr. Gay, there are very few people that are formally on FFCRA leave.
Right, we don't have that many, and they know it on December 31st, it's more being on a protocol. One of the many protocols that someone has to stay home. I know it's changing, 10 days and all that, we know all that, but, So this is just, again, it's a recommendation, we don't want, again, as John said, made a great point, I forgot to bring that up. It's not to, we may gain a little, but we don't wanna lose. We can't lose, we can't afford to lose, because by not doing this, it could cost us double if we stay internal subs. And it's gonna be much more hitting of the budget.
How do we message out our safety protocols for substitutes?
Yeah, I'll go through it.
Where they, you know, what we're doing compared to another school, like a grade school where you may be more exposed to, you know.
Yeah,
How do we message out to our substitutes, our safety protocols,
yeah,
compared to what other districts are doing? Or is there no comparison and they don't know?
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we know the answer to that, do you?
Well, I know that Julia does through the subs portal, talks about, shares our plan, and then all the subs were trained and she communicates with them. Most of our, subs are regular, you know, subs that we have. But I don't think there's, I mean, there was all earlier on. And I know that as new subs come on, they have to go through HR. They have to go through the whole thing, now it's Zoom, but they go through a training with Maureen Singiver and Julia, and all that is covered. But, yeah, I mean, it's,
I mean, just under this climate, if I was going to
yeah.
be a substitute, I would be curious, one, the pay, and two, how is the school district handling my safety line in their building? And if I had to compare the two, I would go probably for the one that's safer
100%.
compared to the one that's going to give me a little more money.
And some could
So I'm
sub,
just curious how.
but some could sub from home. Some districts are fully remote, they're subbing from home,
Okay,
they're home.
so that's really safe.
Yeah, I would think, you know, if they're at home.
Okay, I was just curious how we
Yeah.
message that out. Our protocol.
Yes.
Are there any statistics as far as how many subs have gravitated towards school districts that are teaching completely from home? That are just doing a straight
I
Zoom?
don't know that. I don't know if the principals even know that as well. I'd have to ask Julia. Well, like for us, this is 230 in our private schools, we're here. Most subs don't travel that much. They're not gonna take away 230 to go to, Lyons Township. They're not gonna travel. Most of the people are 230 residents. That's up. Yeah, they do.
For the most part.
Yeah, and most like to be close to the school that, I mean, if Stag doesn't want to travel to Andrew, so they don't have that choice. They don't have that choice. But I'm saying, a lot of times they'll sign up for a school near their house.
I guess I was just more interested in whether or not, when you say they don't want to travel, I wonder if they want to just travel down to their living room.
That's a good point, yeah.
You know, and whether that, if they have that option, if that's the way they want to gravitate,
Stop
they're
there.
really close to home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, but, you know.
Anyone else have a question?
Okay, for the conversation, this is just the new time. But everyone, if we do, everyone agrees with the cost, and then putting a time frame on it, correct? Is everyone okay with putting a end date? So John, in a memo?
Put a memo together then for consideration at the
Yep.
board meeting.
Yep, with an end date.
All right.
Start at the beginning of the second semester.
Second semester only.
Yep.
Right.
You know, 2021 school year, second semester only. Temporary increase due to current situation or something like that. Thank you.
We can move on to our policies for first reading. We have 3 of them. Accounting and audit, student activity and fiduciary funds, and facility management and building program.
These all came from Press Plus, and they're all legal changes, John, and Chris does this, yeah.
And many of them describing things we've just recently done or are doing.
Right. Press is catching up with us.
Yeah. Yep. Nothing major there.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to add or share tonight before we close out tonight's meeting? Then then I'm gonna say thank you very much for coming, and I wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year come 2021. I think we're all looking forward more than usual. And we'll be back to our meeting on Tuesday, January 19th at 7 p.m. And at this point, I think we're looking at probably the same situation we're dealing with right now. But we will certainly message out how our meeting will be presented. And thank you so much for everyone's contribution.
Thank you, and have a happy
Thanks.
holiday.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.